Hey besties, welcome back to my tutorial. So in today's tutorial I'll be teaching you guys how to make this beautiful female palazzo trouser on your screen. So if you're having difficulties in making a palazzo female trouser, then this video is for you. So guys, let's get started. So first of all, the first thing I'm going to make sure is that I'll make sure that what I folded is at least is up to the measurements of my laps. So my laps being the highest measurement, so I'm going to divide it by 2 and adding 1 inch seam allowance. So I'm going to make sure that what I got is actually what I folded. So I'm going to measure the length of my trouser. So for this tutorial I used 45, so I added 2 inches for folding, making it 47. So when I'm done, I'm going to mark out my flap. So for this tutorial I used 10 inches for my flap. So how do you get your flap? You divide your hip by 4 and minus 1 inch, so you will get your flap by using that method. So I used 10 inches for my client, so I'm marking out 10 inches for my flap. So when I'm done, next thing I'm going to measure out is my knee. So for this tutorial I used 23 inches for my knee. So I'm going to mark out 23 inches for my knee. So guys, when I'm done, I'm going to mark out my hip measurement. So how do I get my hip measurement? I come up by 3 inches above my flap. That is how I got my hip measurement. I use that and it actually works for me. I usually come up by 3 inches above my flap. So remember, this is an elastic bind trouser. It's going to have an elastic bind. So I'm going to use my hip. So if you want to use zip, you can. It is optional. So I'm going to use an elastic bind for mine. So dividing my hip by 4 and adding 1 inch. So I am going to also do the same thing of my hip. Then I'll mark my lines down straight to my flap. So I'm going to divide my laps by 2 and adding 1 inch seam allowance. So when I'm done marking it out, I'm going to come to my hip line and make my C curve as shown. So watch closely so you see how I'm making my C curve, guys. So when I'm done, I'm going to measure out my laps. I see I got 17, so I'm going to divide this 17 by 4. So if I divide the 17, I'm going to divide the 17 by 2. So if I divide it by 2, it's going to give me 8.5. So this 8.5 is going to serve as a midpoint for me in order to measure out the roundness of my knee and the roundness of the length of my trouser. So being marked out I've marked out my 8.5. So I'm going to divide the roundness of my knee and I'm going to divide it by 4 and I'll add half inch seam allowance. So I'm going to mark it out down to the knee. So I also come down to the length of my trouser, and divide the roundness of the length of the trouser by 4 and I'll add half inch. Starting from that midpoint that I created for myself. So when I'm done, I'm going to mark it down to the length of my trouser. So guys, that is all. It's going to be all for the front part of the trouser. So we are going to move over and cut it out so that we'll move over to the back parts of the trouser. Guys, so I'm done cutting the front. So I've moved over to the back part. So I am going to make sure that what I folded for my back is enough for me. Remember, the back is bigger than the front because of the bum. So at the waistline I'm going to come out by 1.5 inch. Then at the hip line I'm going to come out by 2 inches. Then at my flap I came out by 3 inches. It all depends on how big or slim your client is. Okay, so for my client, I came out by 3 inches. Okay, because my client is a hip of 45. Okay, so I used 3 inches for her. So I'm going to connect my lines and make my C curve at my flap as usual, as I did in the front. So at my knee I also came out by 2 inches. Then at the length of the trouser I will also come out by 2 inches. So I'm going to connect my lines down to the length of my trouser. Okay, so guys, at the upper part of my trouser I'm going to come up by 1 inch. Okay, so when I'm done I'm going to connect it down to the other part, that is the hip side. Okay, I'm going to make my this line is not going to be straight, just a little bit curvy. Okay, then I'm just going to cut it out. Okay guys, so we are going to cut the pockets. Okay, so for the pockets, this I folded this fabric by 4. So I'm going to make sure that the width is at least 8.5 inch and the length is at least 11 or 10 inch. Okay, this is actually folded by 4, so I'm going to cut it out so that it's going to be a separate piece altogether. Okay, so guys, in case if you are finding how to put your pockets, if you are having difficulties in making your pocket, I think I have a video on my page on how to make a pocket in your trouser or knicker, so you can go to my page and watch the video. It's going to be very helpful to you. So guys, I'm going to make sure that the fronts are facing each other, so I'm going to go ahead and bring the front piece of my trouser. Okay, so I'm going to separate the back from the front. So I'm going to bring the front piece of my trouser and then I'm going to place it on this piece of pocket I already cut out. So I'm going to place the hip side. Okay, I'm going to place the hip side. Just watch very carefully and closely. So I'm going to place it like this, and then I'm going to mark out 2.5 inch at the waist side. I'm going to mark out 2.5 inch at the waist side. Okay, and then at the length I'm going to mark out 7.5. Okay, so I'm going to make a C curve connecting the lines that I marked out. So when you are done, all you have to do is just to cut it out. You are going to cut it out. Okay, so you are going to notch it so you'll be able to differentiate the other side because they have a double curve. So thank you guys for watching. See you guys in my next video. Bye.